the website will be there.
So you guys can use
I'll just use this.
Oh, is that the button?
No, I'm asking. She walked away.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Is there an on switch? You make it easy.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. It's a pretty good turnout for our first one, right? Yeah, woo! Are we good? Yeah, okay. So cool. Like I said, thanks for coming. This is the IT Think Tank. It's our first meetup. It's kind of our kickoff, obviously. So it's up there. So just to give you a little bit of history about like what IT Think Tank was and what it started out to be. I had a friend of mine who was also a colleague. They were about to leave where I work, and I was sad. I wanted to keep in touch with both my colleagues and my friends, and we made this group. It started to do fairly well. We started to ask everyone to share it to their friends who were also in IT, and before you knew it, we are where we are. It's a great group if you have questions or need help on a given topic, or you want to share something cool that you just did because there's probably somebody else trying to solve the exact same problem. So that's where we started out, and now we're doing meetups. So how cool is it for you guys all to be here? Thanks again. It's awesome. All right. So an interesting fact that actually is thanks to ARC. You remember the thing that a lot of you guys probably did to sign up? This is about you. This is about the general stats on who's in the group and what they do. Of course, there's probably a bunch of different slices that we could have grabbed, but just with the things that we asked about, this is the breakdown. Now, of course, there's a lot of client people in here because a lot of us probably know each other from that. But I was surprised to see how many infrastructure people we had, or how much management we actually had. And then, of course, there's a few salespeople. We'll try to keep that down. But what are you going to do? All right. So, yeah. Make sure you invite your friends. We're obviously a little light on some areas that we would like to have more people join, like security. We'd love to see a stronger security presence. So if you know anyone, add them to the group. Cool. Community leaders. I started it a long time ago, but this meetup was largely thought of and spearheaded by the rest of the people on this slide. Dana, Tim, Ark. He's going to come up and talk about some of the other stuff that's going on. And yeah, I think that's it. Cool, thanks. This is Ark.
Well, it's easy to transition IT Think Tank into a meetup when you have like over 600 members, right? A lot of them in the Bay Area, which is awesome. And that's thanks to you, Mike, and everybody that's part of that, because it's a great community. I relied on it. I think everyone does. So yeah, let's make it better. So, why meetups? What we want to really do is, right now I think a lot of the conversations on IT Think Tank are around the client side. We want to actually really dive into IT and really split it up into segments. So we focus our discussions on a security track, a client track, operations track, even like project management, like what are cool tools to use, or what are new technologies, or what's the best way to do this, so that we get the right people that are really motivated, either in learning about that technology or that path, or people that are experts in the field that can actually add value and really help us all grow as individuals and as professionals. So that's why we really wanted to do the meetups, right? Is to really focus it in and tighten it up and provide you some really awesome content, which is why we're not going to have them very regularly, at least initially. We need some time to really put together a good source of speakers, panelists, but hopefully you guys get a lot out of it. We also want you guys just to be curious. And even though we may be talking into a cybersecurity track or having presentations specific to that, maybe that's something you're overlapping in your career, or maybe that's somewhere that you're actually wanting to go. So yeah, stay curious and learn, which I think is valuable for everybody. And the cool thing is, having a venue like this, we can actually bring in really cool vendors with new tools that you may have not seen. So we want to actually showcase that so you guys have ability to really see what's out there and see how people are using it. And also maybe help guide everybody else in IT, all your peers that maybe aren't part of this community, on what's the best thing to do. So you guys are the future, right? We're the bleeding edge of technology. And I know I've seen a lot of you guys do some crazy stuff, and it's been a blast. And also, who doesn't like a tank, right? So yeah, those are some of the reasons we really want to do a meetup and get in and meet everybody and stay connected beyond the social media. So with that comes a little complication, but I'm going to simplify it. So we have our website, which we launched, itthinktank.io, and that's basically kind of your source to sign up for the mailing list, to get info on things that are happening. We're going to basically have all the events, streams tracked on there as well, and give you opportunities to suggest people to speak on, so on a specific segment that we're going to be doing in the future, so we can bring in great value that you guys want to hear. And also, we're going to really create a robust job opportunity section. So for all the companies that you guys work for, there's opportunities in IT. Let's get them up there and get those in front of our communities to really get those jobs filled, because that's tough these days, right? It's getting really good talent for a lot of these opportunities. And at some point, because we work for so many great companies, getting these companies to give perks to our group, so giving you discounts, getting you freebies, whatever that is, for being part of IT Think Tank is kind of the goal of ours as well. So you guys are aware of the private Facebook group. Help each other, post questions. It's basically there also to kind of check in, get the pulse of IT through your peers and what they're hearing. Outside of the Facebook group, we're going to have a YouTube channel, which we're probably also going to integrate into our website as well. But that's going to have all the live streams and all the past events, so you guys can always check back in and rewatch any content that may be interesting. And then finally, social media, Facebook and Twitter. So that'll be for latest news. Feel free to call us out and share with your peers new articles or new Giphies, whatever it is, keep things entertaining, keep things fresh. And we're going to try to do the same. We're try to bring you content that matters. Makes sense? So we really need your help, because it's not about us curating topics and choosing what we want to have presented to you. You guys need to actually help us with that, right? This is for you guys. This is for us. So what we're going to do, Tim, Mike, if you guys want to help me out.
Who's the creepy guy?
It's a Jabberwocky, but I edited off the Jabberwocky stuff. So in order to get you all to participate, we're actually giving away an IT Think Tank hoodie and t-shirt, and we're actually going to get it made for you in your size. Women appreciate that too, because unisex is not, the funnest thing to wear. But what we want you to do is, there's two requirements. One is write down 3 topics, right? This could be about anything IT, and you can go as specific as you'd like. We just want to capture, what's on your mind. What are the things that matter most to you, or more interesting for you to see? And then also register on our website, because if we pull your card out and you're not registered on our mailing list, then yeah, you're not going to qualify for the hoodie and t-shirt. But we promise we won't spam you. We're not going to sell your information to vendors, maybe certain people's, the ones flirting with me right now. But yeah, so go and take a couple minutes, fill that out, and then also make sure you include all the details on the other side. If not, we can contact you and get that info from you later. But let's do that. So I'll give you like 2 minutes, and if you guys need more time, what we'll do is, Dana, can we get like a yeah, not Siri. Can we get like a box or something for us to get those cards dropped into? We'll figure it out. So we'll put something out right here in the front, so you guys can drop that in at any time. Everyone has the info, right? Perfect. So here. I can. And just keep things interactive. Anyone have any great ideas? Global IT Wiki. I'm just trying to bring you back and let you feel reality a little bit, because. And I also wanted to see your handwriting. Open source? Yeah, APIs. Great topics.
Security strategies. Every year at Cyber Monday, we get the new hacks that come out.
Yeah, security strategies.
It's scarier, so that's a real big issue. I saw that on the graph, only 3% of our security is here, but more on that.
Oh, you're gonna like what it's gonna be coming up in a slide in a little bit, because yeah, we'll be touching on that.
How to scale your organization?
Scaling an organization. OS query. There's too many of us. Yeah, pass your pens around, because not everyone necessarily has one.
Can we bring back the slide of what we need to write down? I'm not joking.
Yeah, you guys can just pass them down too, and Kitsy can actually drop it in for us. If everyone pass their cards to you, could you hand? I tried. Whatever brand you want. All right, so just show of hands, who was part of the Facebook group prior to this launching? Yeah, the majority. Who trolls that Facebook group?
IT Troll Tank is the group, seriously. I'm not joking. It's just yes.
Everyone knows better not to join. You ready? Here, Justin? Cool. So we have a guest speaker today, runs IT here at Slack, Justin Wilson. I'm sure you all have met him at some point. But he has this very long title of a presentation he's going to give to us, basically scaling IT at a ludicrous speed. Yeah, things I did right and things I got wrong in my first 12 months building out IT at Slack. So everyone, let's give him a round of applause, and it's your floor.
Hi. So I've been here for about a year now, and we walk through some of the things that we've run into and some of the things that we got wrong, some of the things we got right, and so forth. But I want to preface this with, there's probably spelling errors in this. I finished it about 10 minutes ago, started about an hour ago, so there's definitely spelling errors. So if you see a little red squiggly line, it's cool. Just go on. Yeah. So quickly about me, I run IT for Slack globally, so I'm responsible for all of our offices, all of our IT staff on the corporate-facing side, separate from our production ops and so forth. Previously, I've been at these companies, some of them you most likely have never heard of, which is okay. I started some of those, ran some of those into the ground, and moved on. I hope everybody in this room knows what Slack is. Please raise your hand if you do not, and we will point mercifully. Okay, great. We're not going to go there then. So 1 year ago, I started March 2nd, 2015. I was the first full-time IT hire for Slack. At that point, the company had depended heavily on consultants, contractors, of varying skill sets, some of which I would not recommend, but we won't name them. In this office here in San Francisco, as well as in Vancouver, where our other office is, and so on. There was many, many problems and challenges that were present when I started. Some of those we'll go into a little bit. So initially, tale of two offices. There's San Francisco, which previously was located over at 680 Folsom Street. This is not my first day. This was definitely the first day they moved into that office, which was about 6 months before we moved it. So it was temporary office space, maxed out at around 75, 80 people. I think I was probably one of the last 5 or 6 that could fit into that office without stacking desks. As I mentioned, there was a lot of consultants involved that had run their own initiatives and so forth as far as putting in the network infrastructure that suited them best versus what suited the company best. There was QoS, pretty much every QoS option ever invented, plus some, turned on. You could not have an SSH session that would stay active for more than 5 or 6 minutes. The AV was virtually unusable, whether it was just standard telephone calls or video conferencing, using some widely advertised technology today that will remain nameless, but it sits on top of a TV and we really don't like it. Second office was Vancouver. That office existed at the same time, but it was going through an expansion. So we have the entire building there, which sounds more impressive than it is, but it's a 4-story building. It's an old brick and timber building, which presents all sorts of problems all in itself. Canada. When I started, the expansion was already in the process of being planned. So we had occupied the 4th floor at that point, and we were moving into the 3rd floor. There were lots of decisions that had already been made, as was the case with our San Francisco office. We had also had some opportunities to change some of the decisions that had been made for the AV and network and so forth. Wi-Fi coverage issues. A lot of this has to do with some of the design aspects of the office. In addition to being a brick and timber building, there is heavy use of steel and glass all over the office, namely around the conference rooms. So, and all the wireless access points sat outside the conference rooms. So wireless was pretty much unusable in all the conference rooms. AV was definitely unusable there, but for different reasons from what we experienced in San Francisco. In this office, the walls that divided the conference rooms that were not steel and glass were pretty much paper. And with the TVs backed up against each other and their speakers projecting back on the walls, you could hear the other conference that was going on in the next room in your room, which would cause all sorts of craziness with the echo cancellation on the mics and so forth for the video conferencing system. So it was just unusable. There was one point where an executive actually took a hammer to a piece of equipment. So, and then there were 3. So within the first month of my starting at Slack, we had already moved into a new office, with this office here, which was a massive upgrade for us. We went from 75-person office to this office, which can seat around 300, 350. 3 conference rooms to 30 plus. And then after I got that done, I had moved on to Vancouver to get that expansion underway. And then as soon as I was done with Vancouver, I literally flew from Vancouver to San Francisco, then flew to London to Dublin, all within 1 week to get the Dublin office open because it needed to be opened. So this opened in April 2016. It's located, we're still in the space for probably another 3-4 weeks. Dana, what's the answer there? Just yes? Okay, 2 weeks. Hopefully we get everything worked out in the next 2 weeks. This office is in a tech hub space that's located on the Guinness factory. So it's a great location. Yeah. Lunches were awesome. That's so this is pretty much it. There's nothing more to it. There's one room like down over here, but there's nothing else to it. It seats about 20 or so. The office served its purpose. It was intended to service for about 6 months. We filled it in a month. So we're at capacity there. We're moving into new spaces. This office presented all sorts of challenges all in itself. We had a single unreliable ISP that was provided by the tech hub itself. But the biggest thing that bothered me about this office was the shared network cabinet. So all of our equipment sat in a single network cabinet with every other tenant of the tech hub. And it wasn't pretty. This is a picture of the network cabinet. Our equipment is down here. They had to remove some patch panels so they could make room for our equipment. Yeah. So we're happy to move on. Then there was another office. So most recently, we opened a Melbourne, Australia office in January of 2016. This office had all sorts of different challenges, but not the same challenges we experienced with Vancouver, San Francisco, and Dublin. This one was just timing. We needed to open the office in about 90 days from the time we signed a lease. That included building it out from a blank shell to conference rooms, AV, desks, everything, and it's all custom. So this is a picture. I apologize, it's a little fuzzy. It was the best one I can find on short notice, but that's the office. The other challenge that we have with it is that it's in a heritage building, which means we can't puncture the walls. So trying to get ISPs in is actually the latest bane of my existence. Working with ISPs that are telling us, yes, there's fiber, but there's no fiber. The fiber's across the street on the other side of the light rail tracks that they have to trench under the street to get it into our building, but they still can't poke a hole in the wall because they have to get through government approval to be able to poke a hole in the wall. And then they have to figure out how to get through the basement because it's a 100-year-old plus building, and they have no idea what the crawl space between the basement and the first floor looks like. So some of these challenges are not technical, they're more logistical. And that's been a common theme throughout the last year here, is just a lot of logistical challenges on top of the technology challenges that you experience on a daily basis. So what I got right. And this is by no means trying to be self-serving or anything like that. And definitely when I get to the things that I got wrong, it's definitely not an exhaustive list. I was just running short on time. So at first, I did it all myself, which was great. That allowed me to get full visibility into what the company needed, how quickly it needed it, and how the company needed to operate on a daily basis. That included onboarding, which the onboarding process didn't exist at this point on day one. That's another story we'll get to in a second. I got to meet every new hire though, which was a phenomenal experience. I was one of the first people they saw when they walked in the door. I was the person giving them their computer and telling them how to log into it. So up until just recently, I could like pick out a single person in the office and know their name. That's changed since we've scaled out a little bit further, and now I'm not necessarily doing day-to-day onboarding and so forth for new hires. But one of the things that we've implemented recently is to get that kind of that experience and that face back of IT in front of our new hires is every Monday when we have an onboarding class come in, although I'm not doing the onboarding itself, we go in and spend a few minutes and introduce myself and introduce the rest of the team via slide and so forth. Make sure they know who their support folks are, who's managing their network, who's their local person in their office. We try and keep that personal touch, even as we scale out the team beyond the 7 folks that are on it now. I knew the details of every system and service we ran. When something would go wrong, I could tell you exactly why it went wrong. That's great up front. It doesn't scale though. So I needed to spend some time, and as we scaled out the team, making sure everybody else knew those details as well. There was no sacred cows. So I've worked with a lot of companies, whether it be a full-time basis or a contract basis. I spent a lot of time with very large corporations as well as very small media companies. One of the things I really wanted to do with Slack, since all the infrastructure was brand new, there was no legacy systems, there was nothing. It was just some switches and some other network equipment. I really wanted to resist doing what I did at the last place or what everybody else was doing. We had an opportunity to do something really great from the ground up. So reached out to the community and a lot of peers, talked with a lot of folks, talked with contractors and consulting firms, just to kind of get a feel for what the bleeding edge was and try and not be on that bleeding edge, but somewhere right behind it. Didn't want to get the razor burn from the bleeding edge, but I wanted the coolness and the neatness of it that's going to bring that added functionality and experience to my users. So we were able to look at the latest and greatest and implement some really cool stuff that's not necessarily used at a lot of other companies. Standardized onboarding. So the onboarding experience for our new hires when I started was, here's your computer in a box. Unwrap it. You have 30 minutes before your security training with our director of operations. That doesn't scale. We had machine names that were all over the place. Settings that were just not managed. They were unpredictable. They'd walk into security training and they'd tell them, oh, you need to set the screensaver timeout for this. You need to set your file vault it and then DM me your file vault key so we know that it was file vaulted. That doesn't scale, obviously. Accounts were created in advance. So Slack accounts and other service accounts were often created right during the onboarding training, which obviously that doesn't scale because when you go from one person onboarding to 15, 20 and beyond, there's lots of issues there. Beyond that, that's a terrible experience. That's just completely unacceptable to have somebody have to create their own accounts on those services that they're going to be used on a daily basis. So we fixed all that. We started doing provisioning in advance, but it was still manually building the machines. We didn't have the tools in place to automate that or build them with an image or anything like that. Which was good in itself because we got to figure out what people actually needed on their machines, so we could iterate very quickly without having to worry about updating an image. Or let me rephrase that. I could iterate very quickly without having to worry about updating an image. This standardized onboarding also allowed me to provide IT training that new hires weren't getting before. So rather than just giving them the computer and saying, here you go, good luck, we were able to tell them about the tools, especially the new ones as we started rolling them out, that they were going to be using on a daily basis so they could make the most of them. The last thing I'd want for any of our users is we invest a lot of money in tools that are going to make them more productive, but they don't know that they have that tool. And they end up going to find another tool to do what we already have. And then we end up with sprawl of systems and tools. So we try and get in front of that. One of the best things I did was hire contract help. So we engaged Lindy Group here in San Francisco, and we had them between 2 and 3 days a week in SF. This helped tremendously in the first few months of my job here at Slack. I was traveling all over to open these other offices, and we still had to support this office, and we were hiring 10 to 20 people a week. So somebody had to do onboarding training. Somebody had to build those machines. Somebody had to man the help desk, and it couldn't just be me. So bringing in contract help was a surefire way for us to escalate the team, or scale the team out very quickly. At the same time, keep it nimble enough that we didn't know what resources we were going to need in 6 months or 9 months from now. So we were able to just pass on some of the knowledge that I had gained from the first few months, scaling out some of these systems and doing onboarding and things like that. Be able to instill that in the folks that were here on site helping, and allow them to jump in and take over a lot of those roles. And then even once I wasn't traveling so much to open offices, we now were hiring 10 to 20 people a week, so it couldn't just be one person manning the help desk for the entire company, because I should be building other systems, I should be doing processes and so forth to help the company actually scale out. So we leveraged contract help. They helped us implement Deploy Studio, just ad hoc. There was no plan. Nobody asked them to do it. They saw a problem, and they were able to go in and fix it and help automate that build process for us. Which we were at the point though that the new hire build was stable. We knew what needed to be on it. We had our new hires expected stuff to be there, and it was there. So we were to the point where we were no longer iterating so much of it that it actually made sense to start doing some automation around this. Operationalized support requests. So I'm sure most of you have been in a small environment, or some of you have been in a small environment where a support request comes in like, hey, I need help. Just somebody walks up, raises hand, or sends you an email or a Slack message. That's great, but it doesn't scale. It gives you the personal touch, but it doesn't scale. So one of the things I did right before we moved into this office, knowing that there was going to be a whole lot of support requests coming in for people saying, my Ethernet doesn't work, my Wi-Fi is not working, we've got this new thing in the office for AV and I have no idea how to use it. That would be overwhelming with 100 plus people in this office on day one. So I had to get that stuff into a system that would allow me to triage that, as well as provide that ongoing support. So Zendesk was implemented for ticket tracking on day one in this office. We didn't try and implement it at the old office because people would just not see the value in it. Whereas once we got it here, all I had to do is say, sorry, I'm overwhelmed right now, don't have time to stop and help you with this because I'm helping this person with this over here. Can you put a ticket in for that? Great, everybody totally understood. The other thing we did is set up a Slack channel. So we kind of divided our tickets up into 2 buckets. So we've got questions, like, hi, I need a mouse, or where can I find X, versus my computer's not working, my Wi-Fi is not working, and so on. So Help IT is kind of that filter for us. It allows people to go in, ask questions, and if it's more complex than we want to answer or can answer in that channel, we'll direct them to open a help desk ticket. The one thing that's not on here is we worked with our support team, our customer-facing support team, to actually develop a slash command for putting a Zendesk ticket in from Slack. So shortly after moving into this office, we implemented slash help desk. You can do slash help desk, type in the subject, shift enter, and put in the body of the message. Hit enter, it sends it off to Zendesk, opens a ticket in that person's name. So
Can you post somewhere how to do that?
potentially. Yeah, it's tied to some other backend systems we have to pull information out of it, so it's for names and whatnot, but potentially. Yeah. We're actually looking at making it better. So there's some education there because with the /help desk command, if a lot of tickets we'll get in, especially from new hires, is we'll just get a subject and then no text, and then it cuts off after like, I don't know, 500 characters or something like that. Yeah.
That could be good for an API session.
There you go. There you go. So we want to make some improvements to it, whether that be through a bot or some other mechanism to make that more interactive. Potentially once we have a knowledge base built out, which we don't have an internal knowledge base built out yet. So potentially it could reference stuff like that and then alleviate the ticket altogether. So one of the other things we did around this area is we communicated where and how to ask for help. So we tried to, when it was just me, I really didn't have the bandwidth to do walk-ups. Even when our contractors are here, we didn't have the bandwidth to do walk-ups necessarily. And it was hit or miss since we didn't have contractors every day of the week. It was either me or it was one other person that was in the office. So we did a lot of work to communicate where the right place to ask for help, whether that be Help IT or Zendesk. What's that? So presenting at our all hands early on, just to one, introduce IT to the company, because you're now a 100+ person company, and a lot of people didn't even know that there was an IT department at that point. So getting FaceTime with folks, whether it be at an all hands or when I'd visit our Vancouver office, doing office hours and helping folks with their problems and actually communicating one-on-one, saying, hey, next time you run into this, just open a help desk ticket and we'll get it resolved. Beyond that, communication out through our announcements channels and so forth. So on top of that, about the middle of last year, we established SLAs for our support requests. So one of the big problems with putting a support request in a lot of organizations is you think it's a black hole. You don't know when you're actually going to get a response back. So we published SLAs to the company, and we rate ourselves on it. We actually take metrics out of Zendesk, as well as out of working on some ways to get better metrics out of our Help IT channel for response times. So for example, our response time for a Help IT request is 30 minutes. Somebody on the team should respond within 30 minutes. The ask from the team is that they have a notification anytime somebody posts in Help IT or puts in a help desk ticket, they should get a notification. So 30 minutes on those responses. Anything that's AV related, so if it's a conference room that's broken, it's drop everything and go fix it. Go attend to it. That's one of our that's a huge productivity killer to have AV down. You've now got potentially tens of people on either side that can't function. They can't go to do what they did, what they needed to do for that meeting and so on. We invested in infrastructure. We're in a fortunate position where we've got management support to invest in infrastructure, whether that be AV, network, services and systems to address problems. So when I came in, there was a lot of network issues. The network, as I mentioned at our San Francisco office, was virtually broken. The Vancouver office, it was functional. It was better than the San Francisco network, but it wasn't great. There was two different sets of contractors managing each network. So we kind of took a step back during the process of building out the San Francisco office and the expansion of the Vancouver office and said, we need to standardize all this. So we invested in a standardized network stack that we now run globally. It's essentially a scaled version of our San Francisco office at every single location we have. For the foreseeable future, it will remain that way. Every new office we spin up will be almost a mirror of what we're doing here. So we also invested in provisioning and configuration management tools. This has actually been an ongoing effort for us. We started this effort in the middle of last year to roll out Casper. I started it initially, and there was then I started bringing on the team, and they started working on it. Then other priorities came up, like other offices that needed to be opened. Other systems needed to be rolled out. We built out an AV all-hands space, which we're sitting in today, which was a massive effort all in itself. So Casper kind of got bumped a little bit to the bottom of the pile. Then we started getting feature creep when we went back to it. We were trying to do a lot of things out of the gate with Casper. whether that be self-service and fancy scripts and so forth, when we really just needed to focus on some of the core functionality that makes us more secure for our endpoints. So we took a step back, went back and focused on things like screensaver lock, timeout, and encryption management. As of today, thumbs up, Dana, are we done? As of today, we're done. The rollout is now complete for Casper for us, which was, yeah, it's all them. I had nothing to do with it other than tell them, yeah. We kind of started a phrase within the team, now that we have all this great power on these machines and there's a lot of responsibility that goes with it. So it's don't F up. For laptops, we don't do BYOD. So we're using Casper strictly for managing our laptops. Outside of that, we've got some systems that we use for infrastructure, and those are managed, but we're not using it for mobile devices. So beyond that, we've invested in other things like single sign-on and so forth. But one of the biggest things for us is we have no on-premise systems. There's no servers in a server closet anywhere. The only thing you find in our IDF is switches and firewalls, and that's by design. We're outgrowing offices at a rapid pace. We're relocating them. We're also spinning up new offices. It doesn't make sense for us to have infrastructure on premise. Everything is either hosted by another company or it's hosted on a platform like AWS. That's not to say at some point we won't have some services on premise, but they will never be mission critical. Any office could go offline at any given time, and we should never skip a beat, other than folks that are sitting there with no internet connection.
Do you have redundant internet connections to use a different provider to make sure, like Viasat? We were talking about Dublin that didn't have good ISP. Viasat satellite, second generation satellite. How is that?
Unfortunately, we don't have roof access to the space in Dublin. Yeah. So there's options we're looking at, especially for Melbourne, because I've got 2 ISPs ready to go, but I can't get them to put a hole in the wall. So everything's kind of on the table there.
So one of your struggles, like you find out later that, okay, you now need to go provision service in a building that they didn't use you in the participation of like bidding out these buildings, and now it's up to you just to make it work. Is that part of your challenges?
Partly. So I'm definitely involved in new locations, but sometimes the company gets set on a location, and the question was, actually, where's the box? The question was, am I involved in vetting the locations, or is it more or less, there we go, more or less coming in afterwards and being told to make it work? And it's a mixed bag. So there's a lot of times where there's lack of office space and there's not many options available to us. That's something we ran into in Dublin. Is we only intended to be in the space we're in currently for maximum 6 months, but there's just no real estate in Dublin. So when the right thing comes available, you kind of just have to run with it and figure it out later. So we evaluate a lot of AV systems. So beyond just investing, this kind of goes back to the sacred cows comment. At Lookout, when I was there and a lot of the team was there, we stumbled across Zoom, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It was a great system. And at that point, it was still relatively small and unknown. So when I came here and we were getting ready to build out 30-plus conference rooms, I wanted to know that since there's been so many AV problems, I wanted to make sure that I was putting the best thing in possible for all these rooms. It would be catastrophic for me to invest in 30 conference rooms here, plus all of our Vancouver offices, plus any new future offices, just to have it fall apart on me. So, what's that? Do it live. I prefer phone calls, though. Actually, I prefer an email, not even a phone call. So, for things like that, we really wanted to make sure that we were making the right investment. So we looked at everything on the market, whether that be Blue Jeans or other products and so forth. And we ultimately came back to Zoom, but it came down to we knew that we had looked at everything and there was nothing better that was going to suit the needs. And it was a known factor for us, as far as like a known quantity for us. I was familiar with the system. I knew plenty of people that were familiar with the system. So the evaluation process took a little bit, but it was worthwhile in the end. We're still using it today, and we're still continuing to roll it out globally. As a next bullet point is rolled out Zoom company-wide. On that note, it's actually one of the few products that I've actually had sales and accounts folks come up to me and say that they love using it. Usually, you get a lot of sales and accounts folks that are set on like GoToMeeting and WebEx and so forth. Our accounts team loves it. So in that note, it was a good investment for us all in itself. Made all hands work, kind of. So I put kind of in there because early on, all hands was a disaster. The first all hands I had to run for us was about a week after I had started. And at our old office, there was another company called Athena Health next door. They loaned us their space and they're like, oh yeah, go ahead, use it. So we were gonna run all hands from there. Then at that point, I didn't know that we were gonna try and like stream it to other people. About an hour before the all hands started, some folks came in and they're like, so we need to get the Vancouver folks in on this. Okay. So we ended up stringing together some video conferencing and made it work. So knowing that that was going to start coming down the pipe more, when we moved into this space, before we built all of this out, I kind of rigged together a poor man's AV setup, which included a whole lot of wires, a whole lot of gaffer's tape, and rented speakers and rented staff and so forth to run it. The first couple were really rough. They weren't good. They just were not good. So over time, we iterated on it. We fixed some of those broken components, got better things in, and then we realized that we had to invest in space. We had to make the space usable as a communication tool to get out to the other company or the rest of the company. We also knew that we were going to have to do this for our other offices because our CEO splits his time between Vancouver and San Francisco. So we can't plan all hands necessarily around his travel schedule to assume that it's always going to be run for San Francisco. So we're in the process now of building out an all hands space in our Vancouver office. At the same time, we're planning for a scaled down version of this space in the rest of our offices as well. That way we can at some point have it be fully interactive with each one of those offices, being able to show up on the screen and ask questions and so forth. So in the beginning, it kind of worked, got better. Now it works really well. Fingers crossed this stream stays online the rest of the night, but it works really well. Yeah.
Do you use Zoom webcasting feature for all hands?
We don't.
You don't?
So that was one thing. Zoom has webinar capabilities and so forth, but we really wanted something that was going to give us a platform to house recordings and be able to do on-the-fly video editing and do something with a little more production value. So we ended up going with Ustream Align for that, and we're big fans of it. It works really well for us, and I believe that's what we're using tonight, maybe? YouTube. Oh, man.
You replaced Zoom with Ustream?
No. So we use Ustream for, the question was if we replaced Zoom with Ustream. We use Ustream for streaming our all hands. It's just purely for all hands and events. It's a one-way broadcast at this point. Soon we'll be able to tie in other offices and feed them into that broadcast, but Zoom is our video conferencing solution. Ustream is our broadcast solution, if you will.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then we built out this space, obviously.
Can I ask, is this thing on? Hello? So you mentioned that you were leveraging consultants, Lindy
Mhm.
Group, earlier, and it sounds like in the case with your AV solutions, you were relying on kind of what you knew. It sounded like you had to like run by the seat of your pants with doing this all hands like a week after you came on board.
Mhm.
Did you not consider leveraging like AV specific consultancies for doing this kind of stuff?
We did. So we actually brought in Thresher to come in and help us out and actually run some of these events. There was times when I was actually in other offices and so forth, but there was an all hands, but I had to open another office. So we would bring them in. They would actually, in the early days, it was working with our Lindy Group contractors as well as our facilities teams to run an all hands. and so they were great about being able to actually get the production up and running and so forth. Still wasn't ideal. It was expensive for each one of those to operate. But and the technology wasn't great either because it was still cobbled together at that point. There was a ton of points of failure at that point. So last thing I did is I hired a great team. So, and this is a shameless plug to my team that's in the room. So right now we're a team of 7, including myself. And we've got several open positions globally that we're looking to fill, and we're going to grow the team a lot this year. But everybody kind of fills a gap for us on the team. So we've got some folks that I'm sure you know on this board, and then others. But our strategy around hiring for our offices is any office that is slated to be 50 plus people in the foreseeable future is going to get a full-time person at that office. Anything less than that, we're either going to rely on consultants or we're going to support it remotely, depending on the size of the office. Question?
Yeah, just to go back to the AV piece for a
Yep.
moment. Slack just introduced audio calling, and now I guess video is on the roadmap as well. What happens to Zoom once you guys put that out there?
I don't know. We haven't. That was a lot of news to me as well as when I saw it on the press announcement. So there's still quite a bit of differences between the products as far as capabilities and what we use in our conference rooms. Like some of the capabilities that we're looking at from a product perspective. And I am by no means qualified to talk about our product as far as like features and so forth. What we're doing in our conference rooms is beyond what we're doing in Slack. As just a quick example, being able to walk in and be able to hit start meeting on a tablet and have it fire up and so forth is not something that our product is doing currently. So I don't know where things will go in the future, but at this point we have no plans to make any changes. So back to our offices and so forth. We're going to be opening several offices this year of varying sizes, and so our strategy is make sure we have somebody on premise versus going with a managed service provider or another company like that if possible. We're trying to leverage that cloud stack that at all of our offices so that we don't have to worry about a server going down in a remote office that we don't have a person in. We want to be able to have visibility into those networks from San Francisco or any other office. We're also trying to leverage time zones. So one of my goals for the team is I never want to have put anybody on my team on call. I've gone through that before at other companies, and it's just awful. It totally ruins your weekend, doesn't allow you to check out. And we work hard enough all week long. I want my team to be able to check out. So that's one of the reasons we're looking at offices like our Melbourne office. We're definitely we staff somebody there. So Manuel, who I think is in the room still, he's going to be moving to Melbourne for us. He's going to run IT for us down there. And we'll be able to leverage him for after-hours support for our other offices. Same with Dublin. We're going to place somebody there. They'll be able to, again, leverage support. What I got wrong, and like I said, this is not exhaustive. I just ran out of time. Did not trust my gut at first. When I first came in, the consultants didn't go away just on day one. The plan was to be able to get through the move and see how we'd be able to leverage them and so forth going forward. But they already had their agenda. I had come in the last month before our San Francisco office moved, and the process had started a month or two before that as far as planning and so forth. Came in, and the network stack that for example, they were looking to deploy, like, no, I'm sorry, this just bleeds vendor buy-in, or vendor lock-in rather. There's no way that as a team of one at that point that I could manage that on my own. They're all disparate hardware manufacturers. I'm sure their team was fantastic at managing it and fully capable of it, but that's not what we wanted longer term. We knew that we were going to have an IT team in-house. We were going to hit that scale. So we had to make some quick changes. They weren't necessarily happy about it. So we made changes, but in other areas, on other products, like some of our AV stuff that we did in this office. I didn't trust my gut enough because AV wasn't necessarily my wheelhouse. I had always had other people on my team to take that on. So the vendor there, I didn't push back enough. We pulled some stuff out of the scope that just didn't make sense. But there's other things that today I wish I would have changed. There were some investments that we didn't make that I wish we would have. We're now going back and making those investments today. Other things is, I didn't fire some of these vendors fast enough. I mean, the phrase fire fast has a lot of merit, but it also comes down to like vendors. We had hired some contractors to do some network work in this office just because of timing and so forth. So I sat in on the architecture and so forth and built out the plan, but we hired somebody else to actually go implement it just because there was not enough manpower available at the time. It did not go well. And they tried and went back, blamed the vendor, or the hardware manufacturer a little bit, and then said, oh, well, you don't have this part, you need this part, and so on. Went back and forth for a little bit, and it shouldn't have. It should have been upfront. We should have known that this was going to be a problem. In the end, there was nothing wrong with the configuration, or the configuration was the problem all in itself. They didn't follow like manufacturer recommendations as far as how to like configure high availability. So we ran into issues where we ran out of DHCP addresses because they had changed all of our DHCP scopes and didn't really tell anybody. They had reconfigured the high availability and caused spanning tree problems. So all of a sudden, all of our switches are just bouncing all over the place. We sat through that too long. Should have fired them like within the first couple days of a problem, without them coming back with good explanations. Depended too much on contractors at first. So one of the things I said earlier is that we leverage contractors, and this is not to take away from that at all. This kind of goes to the network contractors that I was just talking about. I assumed that those network contractors knew the network better than me, which in reality that wasn't the case. There was other times where we lost visibility into processes that we shouldn't have. We had to go back and figure out some stuff after we did fire some of those vendors. So there's no documentation to support it. We didn't know what was going on in some of the processes that they were supporting. Final deliverables were often not up to par. So as was the case in some of those network changes that we had brought somebody in to make, in the end, we ended up doing it ourselves. And we did it in less time that they took in the first place. Should have protected some cows. So earlier I said there's no sacred cows. In the end, after looking at everything, we looked at the bleeding edge, and some of those things we decided that it was too bleeding edge. And we came back and ended up implementing some of the things that we were trying to avoid in the first place. And so we spent a whole lot of effort looking at a whole lot of things and trying to avoid implementing that tool, and we implemented the tool anyways. Lesson out of this is tried and tested tools are often this way for a reason. There's often great support, whether that be from the vendor community or just general knowledge on the internet and so forth. The reality is that these tried and tested tools are somewhere in the middle often. They're not going to be necessarily have the greatest cool new feature that you're looking for, but they're probably going to be the most reliable thing for you. Processes and operational, I think I spelled that wrong.
Sorry,
Whatever.
Can I ask a question on that last slide?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have specific tools in mind that are tried and tested?
Sure. So when we were looking at single sign-on, for example, one of the things, we ended up rolling out a tool for that, and in the sales process, there was a lot promised, and I'm not going to name the tool. There was a lot promised in the sales process, and in the end, I'm sure that SSO tool is fairly capable of doing all that stuff, as long as you've got the right hardware that matches with it. It didn't work with our network stack, so we were trying to do 802.1x straight to our SSO provider. It didn't pan out. They don't support the right protocols for our network stack, and so we ended up having to do something in the middle. One of those things that we're going to end up we're doing to address that is we're going to deploy Active Directory or LDAP, but we're not going down the route of binding machines to Active Directory or LDAP or anything like that. We're just purely using it as a middleman to pass authentication information between Radius and our SSO tool. Does that answer your question? And there's other examples like that. Happy to talk about them afterwards if you like. So I didn't spend enough time up front on processes. When I first came into the company, there was just a lot to do. So it was a lot of manual effort to get things just out the door. When I should have taken a step back and actually spent some time documenting things a little bit better and be able to pass that on to my first hire, my second hire, my third hire, and so on. I think after I hired my first support person, I probably spent the equivalent of a month or 2 months of my year just teaching them what I had already done, because it was all just in my head. So being able to get that on paper or on a document that we can pass on, whether it's how to purchase something or what vendors we use to purchase something, or this is what the network kind of looks like. So getting that out beyond just a single person is important. I didn't spend enough time on automation. So earlier I said there was a lot of value in doing things manually up front and learning how it needs to work, but there's a threshold. I passed that threshold as far as when we were doing things manually versus automating it. We were spending too much time on machine builds when we shouldn't have. It wasn't until our contractors took it upon themselves to actually automate it that it happened. That wasn't for lack of will to do it, it was just lack of time and resources. So in reality, I probably should have brought in the resources to do that if I didn't have the time to do it up front. There's also been a lot of instances, and I touched on it earlier, where I became the bottleneck. I didn't empower my team enough to make decisions and correct course if there's a wrong decision made. So there was a lot of stuff that was passing through me. I was being asked, do you approve this? I'm like, it's $50, just do it. So trying to make sure that I'm not that bottleneck, I'm not the gatekeeper for things. I spent too much time being that when I should have done that up front as I brought staff on. Going forward, that's part of onboarding, trying to instill some of those lessons learned to make sure that people are confident enough to go forward and make decisions. And nothing's undoable. We can always fix it. What's next for us? And this is really where I ran out of time. So what comes after Ludacris? Oh, my picture didn't make it up there, man. More offices. We're opening more offices this year. More staff. We're going to hire more people. Automation. So that's one of the big pushes for us is automation and processes. We've got a lot of tools in place now, but we're probably still not using them to the extent that we could be. So I want to do a better job of that with the team. Bots. So one of the things that we're making an effort on internally as well as externally is trying to use our own product to actually take things that are right now sending people to a web page or going to having them fill out a form or things like that to make it a more interactive experience, whether that be for IT support or just locating information within the company and so forth. We want to make sure that we want to leverage that automation that we can gain from the bots as much as possible versus necessarily hiring another person. The last thing I want to do is hire people just to answer simple questions that a bot could do. Oh, there's my image. There we go. Okay. That's it. Thanks. Questions? Do we have time for questions? Do we have time for questions? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions that we haven't been asked already?
Orange.
There we go. So it sounds like you have a lot of cool things in place for automating things with IT support and things to that extent. /command sounds really awesome. Cool. So what do you do, like what processes do you have in place and how do you continue to support your employees who are in remote offices who don't have full-time support over there? Do you have specific things in place? Do you have automation? What are your current things and what plans do you have in the future?
Sure. So a lot of it right now is low level at that point. So like our Dublin office, for example, we don't have a full-time person there yet. We want to hire a full-time person. We just haven't located the right person yet. So there's a few different ways we handle support. So we leverage cloud services as much as possible. So even down to like network management and so forth. I don't want to have to hire a local contractor. We actually do not have a managed service provider or any contractor that we work with in Dublin currently. If there's a problem, we resolve it within the team. If we need hands-on, we'll engage our facilities team there to provide hands-on. That's usually not the case though. All of our, at most it's, can you reboot that Mac Mini behind the TV that's running Zoom because it's hosed? Yeah, it's running Mac OS or something, it's weird. So we'll do a lot of that type of work. We have remote management installed on all the systems that we have in those offices. So we have full reach into everything unless it's completely bricked. We have tools that we're, even on our video conferencing side of things, we can tell when something's been disconnected or it's not the right source that's coming into it, for example. A lot of monitoring tools to be able to get visibility into network performance. Our network tells us when it lost its internet connection because there's something sitting outside waiting for that connection to go down. In general, we have good visibility. Beyond that, we do rotations through the offices. So as much as possible, Dublin hasn't gotten as much rotation time as it should have, but the goal is that the team takes turns going to all of our offices. Lots of travel opportunities for everybody here. So I think I went to our Vancouver office before last year 11 times, 12 times. Yeah, I went from, it's weird, side note, I went from 0 miles on United to Platinum Plus or whatever, right below the top one in 1 year, between Vancouver, Dublin, and Melbourne and so forth. But Dana's been to our Vancouver office a bunch as well. She's gone to our Dublin office now. She's going to go to our Melbourne office soon. We've had somebody from our Vancouver office go to our Melbourne office and vice versa. So it's, we want that personal touch even if we don't have somebody on the ground there. So we try and do a lot of video conferencing for solving problems, but also getting somebody on site.
So, in talking about scaling, sending people to all your office is great because it's a good customer experience, but like you were talking about, that's not going to scale, especially when you have like 80 offices. Have you looked at more user experience focused remote management tools other than just like VNC, like Bomgar or anything else? And what have you considered and why have you checked it off your list?
We have started looking at those, but we have not rolled them out yet. So that's on the slate for this year. So.
How many people do you have in each of your offices so we can get an idea of what you're supporting?
I'll give you rough numbers. Overall, we're roughly, I think the latest public number that came out in TechCrunch this week was like 370, 60, something like that. Our Vancouver office is roughly 60 plus, 60. It'll scale out much more than double that now that we have the whole building. Our Melbourne office is, right now it just opened, it's only a couple months old. It's probably less than 20 currently, and it'll scale out double, triple that.
Do you have full-time on-site people, or are you doing all this remotely?
In Vancouver, we have full-time. In Melbourne, we will have full-time.
Why? 20 people you have full-time on-site, really? Not remote
So
access?
it's not about the 20 that's there, it's about the capacity of the office and be able to have that hire there to help build that out.
Okay.
But beyond that, I mean, we could do a lot of this remotely. We could hire managed service providers for that, but also we want to be able to leverage the time zones, and we're a global team. So the person that's sitting in Melbourne and the person that's sitting in Vancouver, they're not just supporting Vancouver and Melbourne. They're supporting Dublin and San Francisco and so on. We'll never hire somebody that's just focused on one office. It will always be a global team.
Next, how do you stay innovative here?
Carefully. No, we spend a lot of time, again, evaluating solutions and so forth, but at the same time, seeing, is this something we can do ourselves? Does it make sense for us to, this tool kind of works, but it doesn't check all the boxes for us. Can we take an open source product and do it ourselves, or just looking at different angles on filling niches that we can't find a solution for. So I encourage the team heavily to spend a lot of time on that stuff. I mean, that's kind of how this AV, like a great example is this AV space. We didn't know what we were doing when we went into this. We talked with some contractors. We talked with the Ustream folks, and they gave us some pointers, but still, we had to come up with a plan ourselves. So we looked at stuff, tried some stuff, found out what was going to work, and then went and talked to some peers, and then talked to some other folks in the community to find out if they were doing it this way. And then we tweaked it a little bit on our own, and then we iterated on it even more. So it's definitely a whole lot of iteration and trial and error, but spending some time just pounding on tools as well. So.
you speak to what it was like to go from someone doing the work to someone managing others and having to have intention and context?
Sure. So it's painful. I was used to being the bottleneck, for lack of a better word. We have there's an article that's floated around that is pretty popular within the company. Talks about giving away your Legos. I'm sure some of you guys have seen it. You know which one I'm talking about? Oh, okay. The concept behind it is that people are going to come in. They're going to do that job that you're doing right now, but you're spending. It's only one of your jobs. You've got 5 jobs or 6 jobs or more, that things that you're doing currently, but that doesn't scale. You're going to have somebody else that's doing one of those jobs, and they're going to do it really well. So being able to let go of that component of your job and have them take it on. For my team, it's being able to let go of that stuff that I've been doing, whether it be network administration and management, which is definitely not an effective use of my time, and I'm definitely not the most skilled person that should be doing it. To things like rolling out Casper. I started it. I totally didn't finish it. Didn't even get close to even start like making progress on it. It wasn't until I brought somebody else in that was more capable in that area. So be able to recognize when I'm not the most skilled person to do something. Then at the same time, taking a look back and recognizing when it's something that I shouldn't be doing because it's not an effective use of my time, because I should be looking at things like process and scalability of the team. That's something that I should be handing off to somebody else and delegating. And then getting visibility into it on the back end to make sure that it's up to standards. Does that answer your question?
Besides Casper, what are some tools or solutions that you guys are doing to improve corporate security?
I'm not going to speak to that one. I'm going to punt on that one.
What's your relationship with kind of exec staff or upper management? Do they view IT as kind of an enabler or more of a cost center, so to speak?
Definitely an enabler. So we're fortunate enough to have a lot of support from our management and exec team. They want us to make the big bets and do the good things. They recognize that things like video conferencing, for example, it's definitely an enabler. Things like doing an all-hands setup. It wasn't a question of, do we need an all-hands setup? It's like, should we buy the big thing and do the big all-hands setup and make sure that we're doing it right? The worst thing that we can do is half-ass it and then come back later and say, yeah, we didn't put enough attention to this. We didn't think it was going to be a big enough need, and now we need to redo it. So they ask good questions to make sure that we're doing the big thing and doing it right up front.
Yeah, I heard you mention that you started off basically on an infrastructure where you can kind of pick and choose whatever you wanted. I'm curious as to why you chose to use Casper and why you didn't look at other open source alternatives such as Puppet or Chef.
Biggest answer there is manpower. I was a team of 1, and even when I was scaling out the team, I would not be able to get that up and running fast enough and in a managed state and be able to give it the love and care that it needs on a day-to-day basis that it would deserve. Casper allowed us to move quickly and get it quickly once we actually spent some time on it to get up and running. So I think Puppet and Chef and so forth and Monkey and some of the other tools that are out there for Mac management are great. I think there's a lot of value in them, but they definitely require people to be focused on it day in, day out.
You neglected to name a lot of the vendors you weren't happy with, and I've kind of guessed most of them already. I don't think this should be a safe space for multi-billion-dollar companies with sales teams that lie. So I think it would be a general improvement to name vendors that claim to do things they can't.
I've got some conflicts of interest there that I...
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Justin.
Hello. 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 Turn up.
even touting vendors you've had great success with, or vendors that your collegials have had great success with, does not equate to a great success in the future with them. Your mileage will still vary. And I'm saying that only because I had a negative experience with what was supposed to be a fantastic vendor recently, and I'm not going to name names.
Well, yeah, and then like you said, it's not one size fits all kind of thing. It's very, very personal to you, how you work, and the company that you're at. Not to mention, like, in general, like, I would rather keep this very, like, non-discriminate to, like, you know, vendors or sales guys. Like, let's talk about that afterwards if you'd like, but more about tools and concepts and stuff like that. The conversation could go very negative very quickly, and I'd rather keep this very positive. So that's just to address the question.
Cool. So Tim, you want to come up here? So Tim's the other member of our community leadership. I'll let you drive.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to talk about the next meetup. So just a little background, my name is Tim Keeler. I'm a founder of cybersecurity here, so I'm very passionate about cybersecurity, and our next meetup is going to be focused on cybersecurity. So we're going to look to get some of the industry best speakers here to talk about some of the challenges. It seems to be a really hot topic for both the large enterprises as well as the startups. So we have some great things coming there. And we need your help. So if you're not registered on the site, please register. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, join that. Also, like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter. Okay, now for the fun stuff. Before I start, I just want you to take a moment and look around each other, because you're surrounded by the best and the brightest minds in IT right now, and you're part of that. So yes, nerds. We are nerds, and we're proud to be nerds. So we're going to keep the fun continuing tonight. Code 42 has graciously sponsored the next step on this night. So we're meeting at Volta. It's just a few blocks around the corner. Here's the map right up here. So please, this is our first meetup. It's a great opportunity to network, to discuss, to learn with each other. The more we learn from each other, the better we're going to get as IT professionals, and that's exactly what this meetup is designed to do. So thank you everyone for attending. Please chat amongst yourselves, and let's make this grow.